Terra Symbolica fans, thank you for returning to the channel. We have an interesting one for you today. I'm going to introduce to you in a second Professor Carole Cusack, who is Professor of Religious Studies at the University of Sydney. She was my doctoral supervisor and has been a great friend and mentor to me in trying to make sense of religion in artistic and architectural spaces. You know, that's been a recurrent theme on this channel, aside from film, which we also do. My PhD was on religious symbolism in cities, and so that's something that Carole helped me with, and I'm going to use this as an opportunity to turn the camera over to her. She is an expert not only in religion in general, but specifically on Christianity in Western Christendom in the Middle Ages, the Goths, the Gauls, and also new religious movements and religion and popular culture. Her publications are numerous. Professor Cusack, thank you for joining us on Terra Symbolica and for
thanks so much, Mario,
to speak. Where have you brought me here? What is this place?
I brought you to Barrack Street, which is a very small street just near Wynyard station. A lot of people, I think, will never have walked up here, and it's an important place for a couple of reasons. One is personal. My mother worked when she left school as a teenager in the 1950s in the Commonwealth Bank, which is this lovely pillared building behind me, which is now a restaurant called The Pillars. It's a classical, beautifully designed building, and it's one of the themes that I want to talk to you about today. But the most important thing is I've brought you to the goddess Athena.
Oh, there she is in all of her glory.
This is a wonderfully important statue of Athena. She's important for Sydney for a number of reasons, and she teases out several of the themes that I want to talk about today, probably 4 themes. She's a good place for you and I to start, because she is in fact the goddess of wisdom and learning, of crafts and artistry, and so our own practice as academics. She is a symbolic patron, even if we are no longer believers in her. The second thing is that she's a really important deity for the protection of cities. She was, in fact, the protectress of her city, Athens, named for her. And so this is our city. We live here, we work here, and she is now present in our city. And so there's a theme of government, because if you look at the plaque, you may want to show the watchers. This particular statue came to Sydney in 2000, and it came because the mayor of Athens, a man called Dimitris Avramopoulos, he gave her as a gift to our Lord Mayor of the time, Frank Sartor, and it was in honour of the fact that Sydney was hosting the Olympic Games. Now, the Olympic Games connects back to this idea of Athena as a goddess and Greek religion, because they were a ritual in honour of Zeus, Olympios, the reigning king of the gods on Mount Olympus. And the modern Olympics came out of an impulse for peace, which actually is reflected in the ancient Olympics, because there was a 3-month truce before the Olympic Games every 4 years, so people could come from all over Greece and that they would be safe and able to attend. And so we had the Olympics here in Sydney in 2000, and Dimitris Avramopoulos gave Athena to us. So the next theme that connects to, of course, is immigration, because as there's a very good site on classical statuary in Sydney that Mario can put in the notes for you, and the author points out that Australia is the largest Greek island in the world. And he's talking about, obviously, the population of Greek people that we have here in Australia. But European Australia, and indeed entirely post-Indigenous Australia, is an immigration nation. So she is important here. She is part of that story. But it's worth pointing out also a little bit about her. This is a statue called the Piraeus Athena. It wasn't discovered, the original wasn't discovered till 1959, just before I was actually born. And she's the second famous, probably most famous Athena in the world. The most famous was the brilliant statue made by the sculptor Praxiteles for her temple, the Parthenon, on the Acropolis in Athens. That statue has been lost,
Yes.
but there are so many wonderful copies of it to be found in museums in Rome and around Greece and around other parts of Europe, and so we know what it looked like. If you look at the symbolism of this Athena, Praxiteles' Athena is in full armour. She holds a shield, a spear. She looks a lot more warlike. This Athena, she's wearing a peplos, a quite loose kind of dress. She has a goat skin across her chest, and you can see the head of the Gorgon
Yes.
on her chest, which was her breastplate. If you remember, the head of the Gorgon could actually turn people to stone, and so it's a weapon, if you like. She wears a Corinthian helmet, and it's a little bit difficult to tell, but her helmet is ornamented with owls and griffins.
Okay.
And she holds her hand out in a gesture of invitation and of peace. So she's not a particularly warlike Athena. She's a cast of this beautiful Piraeus Athena, and she is more oriented towards peace and towards the aims of the modern Olympic Games.
She is magnificent.
She's lovely, isn't she?
And it just made me think, Carole, about the Palladium as well, which was that scholars think it might have been a meteorite, the object that fell on Ilus, which is where we get Ilium from, in other words, Troy, because Ilus was the son of Troas. And the Palladium was, according to Apollodorus' library, because there's a really good extant version of the myth in a comprehensive way in that text. It was a statue of the goddess Athena, which did not initially begin as a statue of Athena. It was Pallas as a separate goddess.
Yes.
And Pallas and Athena were fighting on Olympus, and Athena struck Pallas dead. And in a state of mourning for her, Athena created a statue of Pallas, which later became conflated with Athena. Zeus, out of anger for Athena, in the text he imposed the aegis, which is the shield that would later be held by Athena and would be kind of superimposed on that would be the face of the Gorgon. But he threw Pallas out of Olympus, and Olympus landed on Ilus, and it's not until the eponymous Ilus, the son of King Troas, discovered the Palladion in Greek, or the Palladium, that he was able to construct the city of Troy on those foundations. That and a dappled cow, which was an omen of good favour, that he could build a city on this spot, dedicated to his father, and all these sorts of things. But from that point onwards, the statue of Pallas Athena, as it came to be called, became a kind of stabilising force in any city.
Yes, that's
so
right.
What was the legend after? I think it was Diomedes and Odysseus moved the Palladium from Troy, which is what brings upon its destruction with the Trojans letting in the horse of the Greeks and so on and so forth. I think that's recounted in the Aeneid. And from there it moves to Rome, the Palladium, and from Rome to Constantinople. So Athena's association with cities apart from Athens is what I was getting to. It's kind of like a global thing.
Yeah.
Athena in Athens, of course, Athens in Greek is still technically called Athene in the plural,
Yes.
because of her divinity. Like Delphi is tous Delphus
Yes.
in plural. It's not, Delphi in the singular in Greek. So Athena has this prestige in Athens, which is her city, dedicated to her. Of course, you have the Parthenon, because she's a virgin goddess, wisdom, virginity, so on and so forth. Prudence in war. Her main temple is on the Acropolis, the Parthenon, but then she's got the statue of her stabilising cities throughout the Eastern Mediterranean. And
now here.
And now Sydney,
Yes.
there you go.
So
There she is.
she's a wonderful gift to have been given to us by the Greeks. Now we're going to start walking.
Okay,
And
let's
what
walk
I'm
together.
going to talk about now
Uh-huh.
is the way in which the classical architectural style, which we associate with Greece and Rome, came to the colony of New South Wales and later on to Australia after Federation as a sign basically of government, of stability, of the building of infrastructure. And so we will see in our city architectural elements like Greek columns, buildings that look like temples. As we go up the space of Martin Place, the mall, I have the most amazing bank building to show you, which is our very own beautiful Greek temple in the middle of the city. And we're heading towards Macquarie Street and a fountain which is called the Governor Phillip Fountain, and which celebrates the first colonial governor.
Awesome.
And we have in there the gods of classical Greece and Rome. I think that they are primarily Greek, but they're sometimes referred to by their Roman names as symbolic, not actual, patrons of prosperity and progress for the colony.
That's fantastic.
And I think this is a really interesting kind of way of looking at it. Just as Athena's wisdom.
I'm going to turn this way too.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You look. This is the original post office of 19th century Sydney, and it's now, of course, not used as a post office anymore. But you will see beautiful architectural details, and you see the figures over the arch, the faces. She looks like a classical goddess. She has a cupid shooting towards her, but her crown says Australia, which is a very kind of marrying the traditions of the past and of the origin of, say, Western knowledge, learning, etc., with the endeavour of Europeans coming to the New World, or the New Worlds, really, because there are multiple of these New Worlds.
Absolutely.
So our city has a number of different possible sets of architectural symbolism. And I know that you've been concentrating so far on some of the symbolism of the Christian church, and in particular, the Gothic Middle Ages has been very important here.
That's right.
So I would argue that the classical style is not ecclesiastical. There are some classical churches in our city, but it's worth pointing out that the classical style is associated with governance, with stability, with prosperity, with organization of societal patterns and institutions, I suppose, is the right thing. And I know that most people will know this, but this ties in very closely with the 18th century idea, and indeed it went on for longer than just the 18th century, that for a gentleman to become a colonial administrator, what he needed was a classics degree. We didn't have engineering degrees or town planning or even, the idea that medicine was a degree. Well, it mostly wasn't. We were in a situation where the best education a man could receive was in Greek and Latin, in the classics, and during that education, as well as gaining proficiency in the language, he would learn through reading histories, texts of mythology, epic poetry, all of these things. He would learn these principles of good governance, is the idea,
yes,
I suppose.
So he'd become his own Pericles in a sense,
Yes.
to learn how to, let's say, govern and function in this new secular world, because these are let's say originally religious symbols that are now being deployed in a secular way to communicate kind of messages in abstraction. Is that what you would say, Carole?
I would say that they're used to communicate ideas about civilization,
Yes.
decency,
Yes.
stability,
Yes.
reliability, philosophical credibility. And we're just coming. This is when we get to the front of this, you will be amazed. This amazing bank building.
Okay, so I'll stop. Okay, Carole, we are now beholding the masterpiece of neoclassical symmetry. There it is before us. the bank building.
This is the Commonwealth Savings Bank on Martin Place, and it's quite interesting because, of course, the bank behind Athena was a Commonwealth Savings Bank, and we have this idea still that we belong to some sense of a British Commonwealth, though I think sometimes in the 21st century people ask questions like, well, what does that actually mean? But it's really important to see that when the colonies, not just here but in America and Canada, New Zealand, South Africa, anywhere British went, when the colony became affluent and began to expand from a very minimal sort of settlement at the beginning to a settlement that was built in stone with monuments that were supposed to communicate, firstly, the connection with the old country, with empire and with Britain at home. This is what was built. Buildings that looked like temples with Grecian columns. This one doesn't actually have a pediment, but quite a few of them do have the triangular pediments on the top. As you can see, they have massive Ionian columns, 4 of them, across the front, and it gives this weighty sense. Just underneath the Ionian columns, there's a Greek key motif.
Yeah, the meander.
Moving around the edges of the building, creating these horizontal breaks in the structure. If we look down on the ground floor, the windows have keystone arches, but they're primarily, basically, they're semicircular. They don't look like the Gothic medieval arches. They don't have the pointing.
No.
They're purely classical, and they connect us with the classical world in the sense that our colony was supposed to emulate those virtues and to plug into the Western civilization, Western culture, Western history as a kind of power bank, so that you could drive what was going on.
Yeah, that's so interesting. The meander design there is interspersed with swastikas, which is interesting as well because we know that that symbol was bastardized by the Nazis. They misappropriated it and it's become synonymous with evil. But in fact, originally it's a sign of peace in Hinduism, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. It is. And
so
it's a very, I mean, these, if you look at the meander and the swastika, they're very simple to make. They're straight lines, they're both variants on crosses and squares, which means that you don't require any sort of sophisticated sculpting methods or something like that to actually make them. So they emerge in that first order of, well, in the case of Greek architecture, we think of the Doric, which is much plainer and less ornamented because it requires less in the way of skill in order to make them.
We had Doric columns at the Athena statue on Barrack Street, that's right. So now you had Doric, now you have Ionic columns, and we saw some Corinthian ones just down there when we were walking past.
On the post office.
The post office, exactly right. So we've had all 3 main orders of Greek capitals represented already in a 5-minute walk?
5-minute walk, absolutely.
And they're on the Colosseum, by the way.
Yes.
All 3 orders
all
were out of deference to the Greeks. Was it Domitian who constructed, or Vespasian who constructed the Colosseum?
I'm not entirely sure. Vespasian, possibly, I think.
Well, they showed their deference to the Hellenistic architectural designs by putting all 3 columns in order of sophistication, the lowest being the Doric, Ionic in the middle tier, and then the 3rd tier you have the Corinthian.
Yes, which has that beautiful foliate carving, which is much, much more complicated.
That's right, yeah. This is fantastic, Carole. Where are we moving to next?
We're going to cross Macquarie Street at Shakespeare Place, which is just near the State Library.
Yes. And
then we're going to cross into the Botanical Gardens where the Governor Phillip Fountain is.
Okay.
Now, it is interesting because we acknowledge, of course, that Indigenous Australians had lived here for 60,000 years.
That's right, yeah.
But the colonists saw certain anniversaries, shall we say, of their occupation as being significant and important.
Yes.
And the Governor Phillip Fountain, even though it wasn't actually finished, I think, until 1897, was intended for 1888, the first centenary
yes.
of the colony of Sydney. And of course, Arthur Phillip, we're just crossing Phillip Street now, this whole area is redolent of the early colonial figures. He was governor of the colony of New South Wales for 4 years, from 1788 to 1792, and so he's the first governor. And he returned to England. He retired from his commission to serve the monarchy in 1805, and he actually died in the city of Bath. He's buried now in a small parish church at Bathampton. I've actually been there. And there is a plaque in his honour at Bath Abbey as well that speaks of his career here in the colonies.
Wow, okay. That's so interesting. We have a statue of a paperboy here.
We do.
That's just interesting to look at briefly on our way.
Yes.
12 years old, striding off from home in Parramatta to high school in Sydney. Okay. It's unveiled by Dominic Perrottet, one of our premiers. All right.
It's kind of amazing when you think about it, that this is that statue is really important that you just pointed out, because one of the things that Europeans coming to Australia wanted to emphasise in the early years was industry and courage and entrepreneurial spirit, the willingness to walk miles to go to school, to leave home at a young age and make your own fortune in this strange place, you know. Well, we're walking now, and we've got another connection, this time with Renaissance culture.
Oh,
as we
wonderful.
go across Sydney to Sydney Hospital.
Okay.
Il Porcellino, the boar.
Ah, the
you may all
boar.
remember.
Okay, yeah.
The
Please
original
talk about that.
of
Yes.
him, he's in Florence, I think, if I remember correctly. It's a charitable fountain now, and you put money in. Obviously, you're supposed to, if you rub the nose of the boar after you put your coins in, you will be endowed with good fortune. That shouldn't surprise you. The donations all go towards the hospital and towards helping medical breakthroughs and treatment for people who need it. And the thing is that this particular boar is kind of a good luck charm for doctors in Sydney.
Okay, all
as
right.
well.
So we'll go have a look at it.
But it's similar because it was given as a symbol of friendship between Italy and Australia, just as our Athena was a symbol of friendship and connection between Greece and Australia. So we have this collection here, this really amazing, important thing. And it was done in honour of a Brigadier General, Thomas Fiaschi, who was an Italian-Australian who served in the army. So there we are. There's Il Porcellino. I'm going to rub his nose.
Yeah, please do.
Just make me lucky.
Please do.
And
I'll do the
actually,
same.
Because to be truly lucky, I have to put a coin in. I'm going to find a coin.
Wonderful. That's great, Carole. Please, if you find a second one, and I'll reimburse you. I'm not
20
carrying.
cents.
20 cents. Perfect. There you go. Look at that. Give him a bit of a
nose.
rub. So,
You give him a rub.
in the span of one or two streets, we've crossed through the breadth of time from the classical world. Now, the medieval I've covered, and you're an expert on that, but now
We're in the Renaissance.
We're at the Renaissance, okay? All these objects evoking past epochs, and all here present in Sydney. And part of the motivation behind, what I've been doing, I should say we've been doing, I've had so many great guests coming on, and they're experts in their respective fields. I don't know anything about this stuff, but part of the what I'm trying to do is uncover a whole register of the city here, which is not usually paid attention to. We might see it in passing, we don't know what it means because of the CBD advertisements, neon lights. We are distracted by corporate advertising in the modern city space.
And we're also hurrying.
We're hurrying, that's right. Yeah.
I remember the city when I was a child. This is almost 60 years ago. I'm 63 this year. I remember my mother bringing me here aged 4 to buy a pillow for my new bed, which was like a full proper sized bed. And that was the first time she took me to St Mary's Cathedral.
Wow.
I had never been inside. I mean, I went to the local church, obviously, but the local church where we worshipped was a 1930s liver brick. It didn't look like a Gothic cathedral. And I remember before going to school, a few other trips it used to be a big thing to come into town to see all these things. So we're going to walk along now
Let's go.
towards the State Library, and then we're going to cross over and see the Governor Phillip Fountain.
Awesome. Resuming our walk, we're coming across all sorts of interesting things. Carole, could you please point out the governor's cat?
We are right now.
Walk over to it, maybe.
We're right now outside the State Library of New South Wales. In fact, this is the Mitchell wing, the original library, the Mitchell Library. And we see here, this is Matthew Flinders.
Okay, fantastic.
People probably know from their primary school history that George Bass and Matthew Flinders, in a tiny little boat called the Tom Thumb, were the first people ever to sail around the whole coastline of Australia and to map it, which is really important and very significant. I mean, map making, cartography is a really significant thing, particularly in the age of exploration. Nowadays we look online and we expect to find a map, and we find a map. These guys had to make it from scratch. Now Flinders didn't live very long. He only made 40 years of age. He died in 1814.
Wow.
And the most interesting thing about that was that he was in fact a prisoner on, I think, Malta, and his cat. And we're going to see, this is probably the sculpture I love most in the city. Mario will know it's not trivial. He's a cat owner and a cat lover. Yeah. I have 4 beautiful cats at home. This is the statue of Matthew Flinders' cat, the marvellous Trim.
Let me go to get a close-up.
You get a good close-up, and then there's a nice little inscription here, and you can read about his amazing. This is what Matthew Flinders said about Trim. The best and most illustrious of his race, the most affectionate of friends, faithful of servants, and best of creatures. He made the tour of the globe and a voyage to Australia, which he circumnavigated, and was ever the delight and pleasure of his fellows on voyages. Written by Matthew Flinders in memory of his cat. A memorial was donated by the North Shore Historical Society.
Wow, okay.
And one of the things that I have at home, that's amongst the most precious things that I own, my late partner Donald bought me one of the $300 small maquette bronze Trims, and I have him at home. He's exactly like this one, only much, much smaller. So we're back in the early colony, the explorers, the beginnings of everything, the ways to connect this new settlement with Europe, Britain especially. And this building, the Mitchell Library, it's supposed to bring us in mind of things like the British Library and the other great museums and galleries that were emerging in the 19th century.
That's right, and it's got the ionic order of columns there. Those are not monolithic columns, they're in sections.
It has an open pediment, which is not authentic, but is an interesting decorative feature.
Yes, the other side of it is decorated with floral-like reliefs as well.
Yes, foliant carving, as they call it.
Wonderful, Carole.
It's great stuff. And we're coming around onto a street which is called Shakespeare Place. Still outside the Mitchell Library, but we're on now a small street known as Shakespeare Place, in honour, of course, of the English dramatist William Shakespeare, who is, without doubt, I think, the most famous literary figure in the whole of the English language. Shakespeare lived in the 16th and into the early 17th century, and he is known not only for his plays but for his remarkable poetry. And we have here also in the center of the road a very grand monument, a statue in his honor, which features other writers and characters from Shakespearean texts.
Wonderful. Maybe we can get a closer look at it, and I'll you can leave it to me to risk my life to get to get a closer shot of some of those characters, because I'd like to intersperse them into the video. But look at that.
Isn't it magnificent? Now there's a lovely pediment. You should actually definitely take some nice footage of this fantastic entrance to the Mitchell Library.
It's just phenomenal. Again, ionic order columns, fluted columns as well, in pieces, so not monolithic, they're in drums.
In the portico there are 8 of those columns. They're absolutely amazing.
Okay.
And as you can see on the wings at the end, you have simpler ornamental columns, also with the ionic order, and they have open pediments on the ends, whereas the central portico has a very solid classical triangular pediment on top.
Yes, and the underside is coffered, which is perhaps, I mean, it's ornamental in its design, but it's for weight distribution as well. I mean, it just helps to brace the whole pediment. Who are the figures on that bronze door?
And we see also the ships at the bottom that point out our distance from Europe, but our connection to it via exploration. So if you look, some of these people, these are mostly explorers. So
they're explorers. That's right. They're not literary.
William Dampier, La Perouse, the Frenchman who came, George Bass and Matthew Flinders, whom we were just discussing.
Yes.
There, Ludwig Leichhardt.
Ludwig Leichhardt. That's something I never knew.
Edward John Eyre. There he is, Ludwig Leichhardt. He was an explorer of the inner central desert. And in fact, he's the inspiration for Patrick White's novel Voss. I don't know.
I don't know. No, that's Rascaralis who will be all over that. Yeah, definitely. But for me, Leichhardt is interesting because my youth was spent in the Italian Forum in Leichhardt. You know.
Well, I still live very near it.
You're very
often
close to
there.
A statue of Dante in the centre. That's all off in the corner.
Beautiful.
That's right.
And remarkable. So what we should probably do is try to get across to the Shakespeare Fountain. It's a little bit tricky.
Oh, we'll manage.
But there will be gaps in the traffic.
Yep.
And then we'll be going in that gate in there to see the Governor Phillip Fountain.
Wonderful.
And maybe there we go.
Perfect. Okay, here we are. With the moon above, look at that. That's quite the image.
It is. So what we have here is a monument to William Shakespeare. He who gives his name to Shakespeare Place, this small street, which becomes a great motorway. It certainly wasn't when this was first set up. Shakespeare's life dates, 1564 to 1616, are carved into the monument. The monument was presented to the city of Sydney as a gift. So many of these monuments were gifts from Sir Henry Gullet in 1914. It's very interesting, the year that the First World War began. And I do not know particularly if this is true, but the emphasis on the arts and culture during World War I was very powerful, partly as a counterweight to war and to violence. And so a lot of art in Sydney, public art, sculpture especially, came into being during the years of World War I, which I find really, really interesting. And there's a quote, of course, one of Shakespeare's most famous quotes: "Our revels now are ended. These our actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits, and are melted into air, into thin air. And like the baseless fabric of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherit, shall dissolve. And like this insubstantial pageant, faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is founded with a sleep.
Is that Midsummer Night's Dream? Where is that from?
I think it is actually.
It sounds like Puck.
Yes, it's a beautiful quote.
Yes, it's beautiful, very much so.
And if we walk around, we'll see that Shakespeare crowns the monument. He is with his quill and his paper, but we see the characters: Hamlet, the meditative prince,
Yes.
Romeo and Juliet, the young lovers. It's a wonderful monument. Very, very beautiful. On this side we have Portia, the lawyer from the Merchant of Venice.
Yes.
And we have Sir John Falstaff, the fat man of Henry IV, whose wit and amusement still thrill audiences, while we understand that Prince Hal, to become Henry V, must quit his company eventually. It's a brilliant piece of sculpture. I love it.
It's amazing, it really is.
We're so happy and lucky to have this with us.
Absolutely.
What we're going to come to now is a magnificent fountain with some astonishing classical gods on it, which was constructed in honour of the first governor of New South Wales, Governor Arthur Phillip. As you can see, Governor Phillip stands aloft with a scroll, which is his mandate from the British Crown to begin to establish a colony. And we see around the fountain 4 classical deities, all of which symbolise the prosperity and the magnificence of the development of the colony after 100 years. This fountain was planned by Sir Henry Parkes in honour of the 1888 centenary of British colonial presence in Sydney. The sculptor is a man called Achille Simonetti, an Italian sculptor. It actually was more expensive than they thought it would be, and it took longer to come together. So it wasn't actually open in 1888. It wasn't completed till the 1890s. But if we move around, you'll see some of these gods or divine figures are less well known than others. The one with the pick and the rock in his hand is actually meant to be Cyclops. It's hard to tell. He doesn't appear to have one eye and he doesn't appear to be blind, but he represents mining.
Okay.
If we move a little bit further around, we will see there are bas reliefs of education, very classical looking mothers teaching their little children drawing and reading and music. It's interesting because there was an intention too for the fountain to be inclusive, and you'll see beneath we have a relief statue of an indigenous member
Yes.
of the local Gadigal people.
So interesting. And why is she holding Asclepius's
Yes,
stuff?
it's like healing, but
Yes.
it's not. As you can see, they have things written beside it. She is labelled commerce. Australia is an agricultural power in the 19th century, and so that's an important thing. We come around here and we see this monument unveiled by the Right Honourable Viscount Hampton, 19th Governor, in 1897. And in fact it's the 60th Jubilee, 60th year of the reign of Queen Victoria, so her Diamond Jubilee. And I think that probably that date was chosen once they'd passed the centenary. They waited for another significant date, and Queen Victoria came to the throne in 1837, and so it was a good way to honour her as well. Over here we have Neptune and a very, very, very attractive twin chicken. I
Fin
love
chicken, that's right.
I love the regal ibis. They're wonderful, wonderful birds. Neptune is here for Australia's conquest of the sea, and also for our maritime connections with Europe. We see more representations of local indigenous people too. When we come around here, we've got Justice. We see Athena again with her shield and her aegis, the shield on her chest with the Gorgon's head and her Corinthian helmet, and people coming to her, the mother with the children, the woman seeking, one would think, peace.
And she has is that her on the prow of the ship on each side? It does look like her, and it's got the Union Jack.
But it has the Union Jack on
How
the shield.
interesting is that?
So she's been co-opted. She belongs to the colony as well, which is really, really important.
So interesting.
And so we're just moving around. As you will have worked out already, there are 2 goddesses and 2 divine male figures, gods, on this fountain as well. So here we have Demeter, who's the goddess of agriculture. And you'll see it's a little bit unusual. She's not normally presented like this in Greek sculpture. She's hatting a sheep, a merino, which is, of course, one of the things that made Australia so agriculturally and pastorally successful in the 19th century. So when we think about these indigenous bas-reliefs underneath, they're actually meant to mean something, as well as just to be an acknowledgement of our indigenous people, the Gadigal, who lived here before the white colonists came. All of the pictures of indigenous people are of men and they're hunting. So you see, what it's contrasting in a way is a gatherer-hunter style of life with the powerhouse of European industry. We might feel nowadays that this is perhaps not a comfortable fit, and we don't want to say that there's a narrative that says that this kind of European industry is progress that outranks indigenous hunting techniques. But we can see that when people were building something like this, they wanted to be able to draw attention to all the things that had actually been brought to the country by Europeans.
Yes. It's clear in the kind of use of marble as well, which is such a sort of regal material, perennial material too. The fact that they are still in the bronze reliefs with the emphasis on the symmetry of their forms does suggest a kind of a reverence to the past, but it's clear that the colossal size of the statues above, that's right, yeah. You can see, now that you've pointed it out, it's quite obvious actually.
Well, it's interesting that this is a fountain. Fountains were always considered very dramatic and very beautiful. Of course, in late medieval Europe, but definitely in Renaissance gardens of palaces, it was a sign of prestige and extravagance to have water playing 24 hours a day. And of course, these aren't powered by electricity like little fountains that people have in their gardens at home.
Yes.
So what we're going to do now is we're going to go up to the Archibald Fountain, which is another magnificent classical fountain. And interestingly, I haven't yet said this to you, but obviously the Athena statue where we began, the sculptor who originally made the Piraeus Athena was a European. The sculptor of this, Achille Simonetti, was an Italian. When we go to the Archibald Fountain, we'll discover another European sculptor, Francois Sicard, who is French. And so we'll see that the colony is not confident completely in its own artists and designers. It's drawing on highly ranked, well-regarded Europeans.
Skillful Europeans.
To make these beautiful things.
And it's got patriotism there as well. I just noticed it now, with 2 children playing at war and defending. There's two children and a soldier there.
You get the idea that the
Centurion
adults
stuff.
are like mum and dad.
Mum and
the
dad,
dad is defending, he's got a sword, but the kids can play in freedom, waving toy-sized swords and little shields, while mum is being the angel in the house. Shall we use a 19th century term there?
Yes.
But it's a great fountain, and the interesting thing
great,
is,
yeah.
it's literally 2 minutes off Macquarie Street, so if you haven't seen it, you should.
And I hadn't. I was just confessing this to Carole. How many times have I walked up and down Macquarie Street? I've never seen this fountain. I just can't believe it. So I'm very grateful to you for showing that to me and for communicating that, the history and the symbolism to Terra Symbolica viewers, because it's all here in a sense in Sydney, all this classical stuff, and I traced a lot of it for you in Rome, and hopefully there'll be other cities. I'll be able to get to Istanbul and various other places, St. Petersburg, that I want to show you. But Sydney has a register of the city. A whole layer of the cake is neoclassical. In a sense.
That's right.
Yeah.
We have all of this stuff. Like we have the actual landscape and seascape that Sydney belongs to, but we've also got the layers of architecture. And again, you mentioned earlier that people get distracted by the modern city, advertising, haste, traffic, noise.
Yeah.
But if you have the time to think about it, it's all there.
Yes.
We can go into peaceful churches. We can see beautiful fountains.
Yes, that's right. It's all here.
It's all here. I love my city,
It's a
and
beautiful city.
I'm so happy, really, that you are showcasing it in this way, so that people, when I was young and poor, a teenager, I used to come with my friends and we'd literally just walk around the city because it didn't cost any money.
Yes.
And I don't know if that's something that people would even think was very interesting. Of course, it was the 70s and things were maybe a little more relaxed. One of the things that we used to do often on very, very hot summer days was go to the art gallery because it was very cool. This is also pre the era of air conditioning, and the art gallery staff used to let us take off our shoes and walk on the cold marble floors barefoot.
That's so good.
Which I suspect isn't going to happen now.
No.
But it was a sign of a more relaxed, maybe a little hippie time.
Oh yeah, that's a return to that wouldn't go astray. Look, our kids run around the art gallery and we kind of shepherd them so that they don't knock over any expensive statues, but they love that space.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a great space. Hopefully we'll see if we can culminate
I
there.
hope we will culminate there, but if we don't, we'll stop at least at the Archibald Fountain. Might be nice to have a look at it. One of the things that we don't see, because we don't look up often, is how some of the more interesting architectural detail is right at the top. And so you have a colonnaded veranda on the second top level, and you have a nice semicircular arch, and it's just this very beautiful, very unusual building compared to all of the modern buildings.
The modern buildings.
That it's now in context with.
And the great example of mid-20th century brutalism.
Yes.
Oh my God.
The law courts.
The law courts. Well, could the law courts be anything other than brutalist? I mean, what else would suit? Unless you got that whole neoclassical thing.
You can do the neoclassical thing. But yes, I mean, the law courts are a mighty and very imposing building.
Yeah.
And they're meant to impose.
That's
to
right.
To bring the
yeah.
force of the law, of justice, in a public kind of way.
Yes, that's definitely the impression that it gives. Had my kids not too long ago, I think it was maybe about a year ago in winter, running up and down here causing all sorts of havoc. And you've got, again, you see with this bullion building, the barracks, right? That's the mint.
This was the mint
The
originally.
Mint. Have a look
It's
at
incredibly
those
beautiful.
Doric order columns again.
Very
So it's
plain, very simple.
It's just
but
everywhere.
absolutely delightful.
Yeah.
And of course we're flanked now by neoclassicism. We have probably Sydney's best neoclassical church, which is St. James.
Okay, yes.
And on this side we have the barracks.
Yes.
Again, these are both brick buildings.
Yes.
And they represent some of the best of the very early colony architectural efforts.
Sandstone, I mean, such a material that communicates such stability.
It does, and it's also,
Stability.
because we have the golden sandstone, it's warm and soft. Like sandstone comes in a number of different colours. Some is much whiter, and it feels cool.
Yes.
But the sandstone that you see in Sydney primarily is a very rich gold colour.
Sorry to stop. Yes. No, I just had a thought and it stopped me in my tracks. So we have Queen Victoria over there,
Yes.
holding the globe and
The scepter.
The scepter. And who's over here?
This
Albert.
is Prince Albert, her husband.
Prince Albert, her husband. Okay, and he's got the sword.
Yes.
And I'm gonna, so that we're not gonna walk up to Town Hall today. The Queen Victoria building.
No.
The Queen Victoria building, I'll put the image in the video,
Yeah.
has a large statue of her seated holding the globe with a cross on top and the scepter as well, which is a very Constantinian image.
And also, that is another sign of friendships and relationships, because that statue was gifted us by the government of the Republic of Ireland.
I didn't know that.
So there you go.
This
I
is
mean,
great.
I can remember
Yeah.
when I was young, Queen Victoria was here, but Albert only came quite a bit later. And he, too, I think, was a gift to become a pair with her, to make it, because this area is called Queen Square.
Queen
and
Square, okay.
St James is St James Queen Square, though lots of people don't use the Queen Square. They just think, well, the train station is St
It's
James.
St. James,
Everyone
that's
just
right.
thinks it's St James, that's how it is. But
So interesting.
well, we're in front, probably, of the best known and most magnificent neoclassical monument in the city of Sydney. This is the Archibald Fountain. As I said earlier on, it was designed by a French sculptor, Francois Sicard, and it's another one of those sculptures that's a gift, a connection between Australia and a European friendly power, in this case France. Sicard is French. The sculpture is actually about the collaboration and support between Australia and France during World War I, but it's very important. Sicard did not build a fountain that reflected war. The god that he places on top of it is Apollo, who's the god of poetry, inspiration, culture, and the arts. The idea of human flourishing rather than humans fighting brutally against each other. Apollo crowns the structure, and there are three other important deities around the bottom. And again, these actually reflect positive things. So even though you don't think of him this way, I think a lot of people think that Pan usually looks a bit like a satyr, but he doesn't actually. This god here, with the ram and the goat, is in fact Pan. And he is not there as his role of dweller in the forest, but rather as a connection with nature and the animals. We see also on this side the goddess Artemis, Apollo's twin. But she, though she has a bow and arrow, is not there as a warrior woman, but again as a creature of the forest and connected to nature, someone who brings natural harmony in terms of the processes of the seasons, night and day, the planets, all together. Now we see also that there are tortoises, actually they're turtles if I look at them correctly, in the water, creating beautiful patterns with the spray. This is quite an elaborate fountain. As you can see, there's a lot of different shapes and different points at which the water is both spouting or being recycled throughout. This, we go around to the other side of the fountain, and you'll see that it has, rather than the four-fold structure of the Governor Phillip Fountain, it's a three-fold angle. And I've been saying this is a fountain of peace, and some people will be looking at the final sculpture and thinking, but that looks rather violent, doesn't it? Well, it is in fact the Greek hero Theseus and the Minotaur, which he slew when he was caught in the palace at Crete. Now the thing is, Francois Sicard saw the Minotaur as a brutish aspect of humanity. He's a half-human, half-beast. And Theseus, who himself is an Athenian and connected with good rulership and wisdom in later years, he slaughters the Minotaur in order to sacrifice the brute part of humanity to bring about peace and good government. So this is very much a statement that is a political statement, this particular fountain, and it's a political statement about stability and peace and the importance of the arts, culture, nature, agriculture, pastoralism, and the future. The thing is, you might say, well, gee, they sound a lot like themes we've already been discussing. This is later on. This is after the First World War. It's at a point where Australia and the entire world is entering 20th century modernity. This is a very retro fountain in some ways.
Yeah.
It connects to an older idea of civilization and tradition.
The angular sort of the way that it's designed in terms of the fountain's parts, is that Art Deco, or am I getting it?
Do you know, I think that there is. You've made a really brilliant point there. If you look particularly at the horses' heads mounted on the side, you realise, of course, that they are moulded on the head of the horse of Helios from the Parthenon marbles, the Acropolis
really?
marbles,
Okay.
Elgin marbles, as they are sometimes referred to.
That's right, yeah.
The Elgin marbles are a massive inspiration to Francois Sicard, and they undergo, this neoclassical style undergoes a bit of a revival with Art Deco. It tends to be simplified and slightly more geometric, but I think that is very clear only here with the horses.
Only here with the horses.
If you look at the animals and the bodies of the gods, they are naturalistic.
Yes.
They're very, richly in the classical tradition.
I think that's very interesting, Carol. I think we'll go closer to Theseus to have a look at him as well. But I was just contemplating as you were speaking, and I'll do a bit of a spiel on the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur in another video that I had recorded a while back.
Okay.
But Borges has a short story on Asterion,
Yes.
who is the Minotaur, and it's like, sympathy for the devil, sympathy for the Minotaur.
Yes,
It's
because it's not his fault that he is a brute. It's not his fault that he is not fully human.
Yeah, it's an amazing story.
His mother is seduced by the bull from the sea, who is an agent of chaos.
Wow, that's so interesting. I'm going to get a bit closer.
If you think about the date too, it's 1932 that the fountain is fully completed. And if you want your Art Deco, look at the fan behind the collar where the water radiates from.
It just kind of, I had that impression somehow, but you pointed out exactly where it is, Karen. There he is, playing the Minotaur, Asterion, and that's the Archibald Fountain.
Yes, it is. It's totally amazing.
Right opposite St Mary's Cathedral. And you've seen the videos on this channel with Chris Walter and Dr. Van Oplu on St Mary's as well. Please check those out. And we're going to continue our walk.
Yes, we are.
I hope so, yeah.
We were just talking about having made some beautiful videos about St Mary's. And of course, it's one of my favourite places in the city. And I've already mentioned my mother taking me there as a small child prior to even going to primary school. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is when you think about the beginnings of colonial Sydney, the centre of the city is St Andrew's, because the colonial ascendancy is Anglican, not Catholic. And so the town hall and St Andrew's Cathedral are at that cross point, which is the centre of the early city. Now, when the Catholics came to build St Mary's, they got this land because it was on the absolute end of what would have been considered civilized space. It was, we find this so hard. Like, I love walking. The idea that it would take, 15 minutes to walk from St Andrews to St Mary's, this was a long way. And the other thing is, you may remember, on the far side of St Mary's, the land falls away sharply.
Yes,
it's not optimal land. But the Catholics were allowed to build their cathedral because by that stage, the Catholic Emancipation Act of 1829 had been passed, and it was legal to be Catholic, and there were in fact priests and nuns and Catholics practicing their faith, and it became clear that an archbishop was an appropriate thing. And I mean, this is another thing that people may not know if you're just getting to a little bit sort of aware of church history. When there was no Anglican archbishop here in Australia, the Anglican Church was under the Diocese of Calcutta in India. And you can actually see that if you go to Cobbetty, which is now in the area near the Badgerys Creek new airport. The local church there actually has Diocese of Calcutta carved over the lintels of the doors. Now, where was the Catholic authority before there was a Catholic bishop here, before John Bede Paulding came? Well, it was administered by the Vicariate of Mauritius.
Really?
So we were connected to the French Catholic Church, even though Paulding, when he came, was of course a downside Benedictine from England. But it's so interesting. We had all these different connections. Christianity has always been international.
Yes, but this is such an interesting thing to point out in relation to Sydney itself, which is so far away from the rest of the world. I mean, you never make that immediate connection on an ecclesiastical level, that the Diocese of Sydney would be under the auspices
of Mauritius.
Of Mauritius. Or Calcutta in relation to the Anglican.
But what both of those places point out is that where the British colonies had been before, we were still connected to, because they'd set up their dioceses there.
Yes.
And so there were authorities in places that had become colonies before here. And when we come along, Johnny come lately, the only reason there's a penal colony here is because the American Civil War prevents the transportation of British criminals to America.
That's so interesting.
And so you have to put them somewhere.
Yeah.
Put them in Australia.
Put them in Australia and bring over all of the cultural artifacts and symbols. Like look, I mean, are those griffins up there? They
are,
yes.
In fact, beautiful griffins. I love that. That's a gorgeous fountain too.
And it's got Corinthian capitals, I think.
Arethusa written on.
Arethusa, wow. What does that mean, Arethusa?
It's Greek.
It's Greek. I'll put it in the. I'll look it up and put it in the notes.
But this is 1881, I think. It's the 1880s, that fountain.
Yeah, 1881.
And it's a drinking fountain, unlike the ones we've been looking at so far, which are just for people to admire.
Yeah.
This is actually for people who are walking in the streets and need to refresh themselves.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's great. It's fantastic. We often make the walk up here from the parking of the Domain down there to that's our cheat parking whenever we come as a family into the city, so we often get to admire this space.
Well, I love this just Art Gallery Road. It's such you behind you have the fountain, you have St Mary's, you have the little chapter houses sticking out at the end of St Mary's. It's beautiful. And then we walk along here and we have the opening, the columns, the pillars that are still left from like the gates of this space, marking it out as a special. It's called the Domain. Well, it's a special domain.
Yes,
you see.
Indeed.
And you can see there were gates in them. You can see the metal stuck in the stone. They're not there anymore, of course, because the all-dominant car must be able to drive in.
That's right.
But there's a gatehouse that indicates this domain as a special place,
That's
place
right.
that's set apart.
And you have these interesting acanthus spirals on the underside of
And
the posts here
beautiful,
in sandstone.
beautiful Corinthian capitals
Yes, they are. They're a type of Corinthian. That's right.
with
Yes.
the lavish foliage.
That's right. Did the Greeks know that their hand would stretch so far through history, through time? You know, thanks to the Romans,
It's true, you know.
via the Byzantines, and
They are immortal.
they are
They're-
just immortal. You know, like
they are immortal.
it's remarkable stuff.
And this is you know, it's an amazing place. These are also places where they reflect the 19th century. One of the things that a lot of people don't realise is that it's the 19th century. We'll just go down this road because it's quieter.
Yes.
And we can double back. The 19th century is when the ideas about public libraries, art galleries, museums, parks that are to be used by the populace
Yes.
become extended from being the playground of aristocrats who had their own private cabinets of curiosities where they'd collected different antiquities and things and pieces or art, or had portraits, you know, of their family painted by all sorts of amazing artists over the generations. And suddenly there was this idea that education was becoming something that everybody needed. There was already an idea about modernity.
Yes.
And you would know this again, thinking about St Mary's. The architect, William Wilkinson Wardell, what did he do before he came to the colony of New South Wales? Well, he worked on Isambard Kingdom Brunel's Great Western Railway. You wouldn't have thought that was a man who would then go and build a brilliant neo-Gothic cathedral. But the sort of narrow specialisations that we're accustomed to simply didn't exist.
Yeah.
If you were a person trained in architecture or engineering, one week you might be building a railroad, and the next week you might be building a cathedral, and the week after you might be building a public library or a school or a hospital.
These were giants in a sense, because our over-specialisation, although we're very, very good in our respective fields and disciplines, this Renaissance man, Renaissance person is perhaps a better way to designate it, phenomenon, is something that has dissipated in public life. There are a few people. Bruce Dickinson is one of my favourite Renaissance men. Iron Maiden lead singer. He flies his own jet. He's an Olympic fencer. He writes stories. I mean, wow, you know. I mean, Ozzy Osbourne, rest in peace, Ozzy. You know, I'm sad about the passing of Ozzy, but he could barely sing.
He was not a Renaissance man.
He was not a Renaissance man. So there are people and people.
Yeah.
But
look, I think about this a lot. There are people who make films and write books and paint portraits and maybe design houses, or like, for example, Ai Weiwei, the Chinese conceptual artist. I just read a book about him. Not a very long book, just one of those little introductory penguin things. And I was really surprised because I did not know. Let's rejoin the road here.
Sure.
He is also an award-winning architect with a staggering number of buildings that he's built as well.
Really?
And you're thinking,
wow,
this is so amazing.
It's
you know?
amazing. Yeah.
How does somebody, you know, and he says, I started off doing what most people did with art. I drew and I painted, then I did conceptual art. Then I thought I'd turn my hand to buildings. And so now I'm an architect. Who would have thought it? And he also absolutely adores cats, and his studios are full of them, which is another reason why I think he's quite a nice and interesting person. But we're approaching the Art Gallery of New South Wales, and this is our final stop.
Yes.
This is the thing that I want to show you, the last thing, and it connects very closely to the Archibald Fountain. It's two magnificent sculptures, equestrian sculptures, which are out the front of the art gallery. They're called the Spoils of War and Peace. And they're a post-First World War memorial, essentially. And at the time, there was some controversy about them. The sculptor is a man called Gilbert Bale. He's British. And they were originally commissioned from 18-inch maquettes, plaster maquettes, and it took a long time to get full-sized plaster sculptures made that then could be cast. And as you can see, we're now standing in front of Gilbert Bale's sculpture, The Offerings of War. You can see that it's the warlike sculpture. The horseman wears a helmet. He carries a bundle of broken weapons and swords. There is a suggestion that war, therefore, isn't always dominant, but nevertheless, there's an impression of violence, an impression of death and of sacrifice that comes with war. As I was saying earlier, these sculptures were originally designed as small plaster maquettes. The money that was meant to be put towards this, which was a kind of war memorial, initially I think they were budgeted at £1,500 each, but by the time they were actually installed, the expense had swelled to beyond £2,000 each, which was a very large amount of money in the 20s. And I think I mentioned also that they were rather controversial because they are so conservative. They do not have any sort of concession to modern art, modern sculpture, which was beginning to be important in Europe and in America also. But these are very, very pure neoclassical works.
Absolutely. And you have in the running entablature at the top there, you've got the shell, which designates something as sacred in the classical Greek world. We know from Botticelli's Aphrodite that that's something that comes up, and you have these bas reliefs there, these bronze reliefs, sorry.
And you'll see, Gilbert Base, actually he did the first one, Ashur-natsupal, king of Assyria, and it's dated 1908. Wow. So he was already connected to the Art Gallery of New South Wales. His artistry and his skill was known, and so when he became selected for as the sculptor of these magnificent statues, he already had a history. The interesting thing is they weren't supposed to be where they're supposed to be.
Maybe we can wander over to the other one as we're...
We will.
Yeah.
They were supposed to have been wedged on either side of the portico, closer to the steps, and
we'll go around you, sorry.
People had this idea that that would actually spoil the aspect, the temple-like aspect of the front of the building, and so they were placed halfway along the wings to stand alone.
And this is a recurrent motif we've seen with the giant ionic capitals, floral designs, fluted in multiple drums. You don't get a lot of monolithic freestanding ones in neoclassicism in modernity, actually. It seems to be something that the Romans were preoccupied with, like in the Pantheon in Rome. We
also have the magnificent triangular pediment over the portico.
It's fantastic. It's coffered on the underside, yes, as well. Oh, look, it's a magnificent building.
So now we're walking towards the Offerings of Peace, which, as you can see, is quite a different sculpture.
Yeah. Because
the horseman holds aloft a plant, a sprig of growing stuff.
Yes. Yes.
There is no helmet on his head. There are, interestingly, and I thought you might like to comment on this, people would like that.
Yes.
You see that there are the masks of, yes, comedy and tragedy.
Yeah.
Now a lot of people say, well, what's that got to do with peace? Well, it's part of the same idea that you saw in Sicard's Archibald Fountain, the idea that the arts and culture flourish in peace, yes, rather than in war. Yes. But comedy especially is associated with peace, and tragedy is associated with the appropriate memory of war.
Wow, I'll take a close-up of them. Those are fantastic. They're on the sort of, it's not a mantle, it's a...
Cloak, maybe?
Cloak, yeah, that is draped
over his thigh and dangles down. It's like a swathe of cloth, and you see, yes, there, Gilbert Base, 1923.
Yeah.
I think they weren't actually installed till 1926.
All right.
And
sorry.
we have a legend around the bottom. So I didn't comment on the other side, but you see it says the offerings of peace at the front.
Pomegranates and
fruits, beautiful kind of and feeling, and it says the real and lasting victories are those of peace and not of war.
Amen to that.
Which is an amazing and beautiful thing. And you see he's got a lyre up there, so culture again, music, and then we've got our beautiful Greek key pattern on the draped cloak.
There it is again.
So as I say, unashamed, unembarrassed neoclassicism in the 20s.
And that's a whole layer of the cake here in Sydney. Carole, thank you so much.
It's been so much fun. I love
been a
it.
wonderful journey.
I really love Sydney, and as I say, I've been walking around looking at these things for a very long time, so it's beautiful to be able to talk about them.
Thank you, Carole. And thank you, friends, for watching, and hopefully we'll do more in the future as well. Come up with more. Remember to like, share and subscribe. We're back because you have to see the sphinxes, right? What does a sphinx do traditionally in Egyptian mythology, and the Greeks then took that as well? They are protectors of spaces, aren't they?
Yes.
There's the famous riddle of the sphinx at the associated with the pyramid in Giza.
It's also associated with, of course, Oedipus. The riddle of the sphinx is what walks on 4 legs in the morning, on 2 at midday, and on 3 as the sun goes down. And the answer, which Oedipus gets correct, is it is man, or the human, if you want to be non-sexist these days, who crawls as a child, walks upright as an adult, and in old age leans upon a stick.
Wow. I mean, wisdom coming from the past, but have a close look at these. The upper half of the body is of a female, and of course the rest of the body is that of a lion. We are not going to, like Napoleon's soldiers, shoot the noses of these beautiful bronze creatures.
These are actually not explicitly connected to the gallery either. These actually belong to the Botanical Gardens, and the Friends of the Botanical Gardens are responsible for their installation here. And this is another beautiful thing. When we have more time, we should walk in the Botanical Gardens. There is the Venus Fountain. There are the amazing statues of the boxers, Croesus and Demoxenos, who competed in the Nemean Games, and Demoxenos cheated, and Croesus was given victory as he died. They're beautiful. There's also a lovely satyr and some other wonderful neoclassical sculptures in the gardens.
Friends, more reasons to visit Sydney.
Absolutely.
Ciao.